This video is the third in a series where I will show how I create patterns mostly for doll sewing, and I use patterns that are starting out in PDF and then I use them in Inkscape. This video is the third in a series where I show how I create patterns from PDF patterns, which I mostly use for making doll clothes. So in my first video, I showed how I take a PDF pattern, which this shows here as either a scan of a hand-drawn file, so I'll just take something that I've drawn myself and then scan it on my scanner, or I can use a PDF pattern that I've either created previously or maybe it's something I've bought, and then I've imported it into Inkscape. So in my first video here, I showed how to trace the PDF to an SVG file. In my second video, I showed how to take that trace PDF file and import it here to Cricut Design Studio. So in this video, I'm going to take a different path. We're going to take this trace PDF and we will create the PDF version and add detail to the PDF pattern so that it looks like something that you could publish. So I have another pattern here that I have already done this process. You can see I have the front of a dress, I have the back, and then I not only have this cutting line that we did in the previous video, but I now have the sewing line, and then I have the pattern piece marking saying that's the back, how many to cut. I show the fold here, I show where to gather there, and of course I want to have this scaling option here where if you print it, you're going to be able to make sure that it hasn't increased 25% or decreased. It's going to make sure that the pattern still fits. Alright, so let's get started here. Now that we've gone through the organization, let's open up a new document in Inkscape and import the file that we're going to need. So I've opened Inkscape, and now I'm going to go here and import my PDF file. So we're going to do this A-line jumper. We're going to get page 4. Alright, so we can see here that's the correct one because it has the pattern on it. So we'll hit OK. And it'll import our pattern piece. So we're going to zoom in a little bit. One of the first things we want to do is make sure that it is to scale. So I'm going to take a square. I'll go here to make sure it's exactly 1 inch. It looks like we're going to need to rotate the pattern a little bit to line them up. And that looks like it is exact, so it looks like we've got a good scale. Alright, so as we did in the first pattern, I'm going to trace this pattern with the tracing tool here. This will allow us to draw Bezier curves and straight lines. So this is the drawing tool we're going to use. Alright, as we did in the first video, we're going to highlight all the nodes. We missed one there, so let's make sure we get it. We'll start by making them adjustable. We'll make them two-way adjustable, and then most of these are going to be straight, so we're going to highlight those. And then we're going to make the adjustments to correct for all of the curves and just make sure that everything is exactly on the line as we did before. Before I also made this made the pattern line blue so that it'll stand out. So we're going to want to do that here. And I will adjust a few of these, and to save some time, I'll do that off camera. Okay, so just to show you a few of the adjustments I made, I'm going to put this in exactly the right spot, and then I'll grab the ends of these and make sure that the line perfectly follows our pattern. So we'll do this one here, and then I will continue to get the rest of them cleaned up. So one thing I wanted to show you is you can tell right now you can't see the nodes on the corner of this pattern that we're drawing. And that's because we are in this mode here, where we are using the pointer, the arrow. If you want to get to the nodes, just click on this Edit Paths by Nodes tool, and that will allow us to access our nodes again. So we're going to keep going through and editing these, as we were showing before. If you have any questions on the process, or if there's something I'm skipping over, please let me know in the comments, and I'll try to add more detail. But I'll just quickly do this. I've done this quite a bit. It might take a little bit of time to understand what's going on here, but I think these are actually pretty easy to use. And I did try for a while to use the auto tracing tool, but I found that it's actually a lot easier if you just draw it yourself and then correct for any differences. At this point, I have all of my pattern traced, which is something I covered in my first video. At this point, I just have the cutting lines. This is all I'm going to want if I am going to export this file to my cutting machine. I would need to delete the additional PDF file that's in there, but this would be all I need for my cutting machine. So at this point, I'm going to take a different path. I'm going to prepare this pattern as if I was going to publish it, and I wanted to have a clean pattern for people to be able to follow the directions and see the lines that we need. So we're going to add our 1/4 inch inside cutting line. So to do this, we select this here. I've selected that cutting line, and we're going to duplicate it, which I do with Control D. There's also a tool in here that I'm not sure because I've used the shortcut so many times, but we're going to want to duplicate it. So now there should be 2 of those, and then we're going to go to Path and Inset. And then we're going to want to do that 12 times to get it in a 1/4 inch. So you can also do that by using Control and then the parentheses. So I'm going to do that. So I've done it once, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And you can see that it now matches that faint sewing line there. So in our sewing pattern also, the cutting line is a solid line, but we want to have a dotted line here for the sewing line. So for that, we're going to go to Stroke Style over here. We're going to change this to whatever dash line we want. And if you're not seeing this Fill and Stroke tool, you'll need to just go down to the bottom here where it shows Fill and Stroke, and if you double click here, it'll bring you to that option. It'll take you to this tool over here where you can do the fill, where you change the fill color, the stroke color, or the stroke style. So what we've done is we've changed it to dashes. And you can kind of see that. I'll zoom in a little bit. You can see that there's small dashes that mark that line now. Alright, so when we make our pattern, sometimes we'll want to add notches, and we'll do that the same way we did when we were making adjustments to this sewing line. This pattern doesn't happen to have any notches, but we'll just add one just for the sake of having this in a tutorial. So here you can see I've got these 2 nodes. We've just got a straight line. So the way to add a notch would be to highlight the two nodes that are on the edges of where you want your notch, and then just start adding these adding the nodes between them. So let's say we want to have a notch here on the side. So we're going to add a whole bunch of them, then we'll delete the extras. When you add the nodes, they'll just add one between the center of them. So here, I think I might want it a little closer together. So I'll add one more node. And then because this is such a small pattern, I think I want them pretty close. So I think I'm going to take this one off and then add one more node between those 2. And this is incredibly easy. You just go in and pull it in like that. And if you wanted that in your cutting line when you export it to the cutting machine, that's something you could also do. So we've got a notch there. So you can see where we are right now by just we can go to this PDF and pull it out of the way, and that's what our pattern looks like so far that we've drawn. So let's put this back, and we're going to start adding the text. So the text that we have handwritten on this pattern is probably about everything we need. We do still want to keep this scale box, which we've already created, and let's add text to say that it is 1 inch. So we're going to use this text tool. I just clicked on that quickly. So this will allow us to create and edit text objects. So just come in here and make a text box, and we can type whatever it is that we want the text to say. So I'll just say 1 inch. And then I'll want to highlight the text, and I can make it smaller so it'll fit in our 1 inch box. So let's see how that looks. It's probably way too small. So that's about the size that we currently have. And we don't need to worry too much about the size of the text box. You can make it smaller, but it doesn't really matter. It's not going to show up in the PDF pattern. So we'll just put this 1 inch in the box. Oh, it looks like we need to change the text, which is great. This will help us cover that. So we just click on it until it changes the text option again, and change that to a 1. And we change back to this tool, and we can put this inside there. So I'm going to want to, if I hold the Shift key, I can select both those objects, and I want to really make this a good clean pattern. So I'm going to center both of them. So now that I have both of them highlighted, I'm going to use the Align tool. To get the Align tool, we're going to go up to Object, and then Align and Distribute, and we'll get another tool set over here. So I have these two highlighted together, and I want them centered. So if I want them centered on the vertical axis, I'll click this tool. You saw that straightened up just a little bit, and then if I want to center it on the horizontal axis, I'll click this tool. And now that should be centered. So I want these two to stay together. As I move around, I want them to be an object that's combined. So I'm going to Object and then Group. And now you see if I click off and I click back on this and I drag, oh, I didn't want to do that. But if I use my dragging tool, I've got those arrows, I can just drag it and it holds on to both of them. I can put them wherever I want to on the pattern. So we're going to use the same method of adding text to add the name of the pattern. So we can add the A-line dress, we could add that it's the back, and we'll work on those. Also, if you don't want to have to reselect the text options every time, you can just copy and paste. So I took this 1 inch square, our guide here, and I can then ungroup it if I go here and delete this square, and I can just edit that text to do whatever additional text I want to add. So if I want to use this text setting, I can type back, and that is now my label for here. One of the things I didn't show in this video yet, but I did do in my prior video, is that we're going to need to take out any folds in patterns. So you can see over here, this is this pattern piece where there it says to place on fold. And I don't like to have things placed on fold when I cut them. For the PDF pattern, it's fine, but you can do it either way. So that's one of the things I wanted to point out that's different from my prior video. Since this is just a paper pattern, I think we can leave the place and fold, and we'll just keep adding the text, but we need to make sure that we include that instruction on our pattern. So when you copy and paste these two, I'm going to copy the back to make the front. So see here, I can't edit the text yet. You just click on it a couple times until you get to the text option, and then it'll let you edit the text again. So I will put these in the correct place, and we can use the same method we used on this square to add the back. If we want it centered vertically or horizontally or aligned left or right, we can use that same tool that we used before to make that adjustment here. So I think I want to just flip this over and maybe straighten it out a little bit. So I'll click on it again, and that will allow me to use these other tools like rotate. I want to have it straight, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'll add the front instruction there. And I'm running out of time in this video, so I'm going to show you in the next video just the last few edits that we need to make to rotate that place on fold so it's in the right place, and I'll do some of the finishing pieces.